Embrace the chaos.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project. It's been a long time. I'm your host, Tanner Dexter, joined as always by my good friend, Tucker Hazel. Abram Buter not here, as he sometimes is on these UMP videos. And you know what they say, Tucker? When Abram is away, Tucker and Tanner will play.
Oh God, yeah, we do.
Yes. And this
And we
week,
will.
Tucker, this week we are playing with episode 1 of Moon Knight.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say this is a playful little episode, I think.
Yeah, playful little series about cults and gods and violence.
Putting broken glass in your shoes and walking around.
Perfect. Yeah, that's how I play.
Yeah, exactly. And if you'd like to get in on all that action, you should join the Discord. That link is in the description. You should like this video. You should comment your thoughts on the first episode of Moon Knight. And follow Backlog Banter if you're not already. If you stumbled across this somehow in the deep, dark catacombs of YouTube, welcome. But Tucker, should we just roll right into our thoughts on the first episode of Disney Plus's Marvel's Moon Knight?
Marvel's Studios, a Kevin Feige production.
A Kevin
Moon
Feige
Knight.
production.
Also executive produced by Oscar Isaac, I believe I saw in the credits there.
Wow. Yeah. Tucker, since you're not going to roll right into it, I'll roll right into it, I suppose.
I had to clarify a few things first.
Yeah. Thank you. I finished watching Moon Knight approximately 30 minutes ago, and I had a good time. I think there's a lot of positives about these first episodes. It comes strong out of the gate in a lot of aspects, I think. Not so strongly in a couple other aspects, but in the important stuff that I look for in, TV, movies, whatever, in terms of like storytelling and getting the audience hooked on a first episode, I think Moon Knight does all of that very, very well. I think this whole thing of like the setup of this episode is basically we have our main character, Stephen Grant, as he is sometimes known in this episode. He's basically like solving a mystery of what's going on? Who am I really? Why am I being randomly transported to the Alps? What's going on in these times where I'm sleeping? Am I sleepwalking? What's going on? I think that's a fascinating way to open up the series. Obviously, I know what's going on since I know the main crux of this show. But I think that setup, that sort of impetus for the story is interesting nonetheless. But Tucker, what did you think?
Yeah, I watched Moon Knight episode 1 this morning, and I'm in quite a similar boat. I think that this was a good start, a very different start than what we've come to expect, not only for Marvel Studios films but the Disney Plus series, because this is the first time we're getting an original character, a show based on an original character that is not fleshing out someone that we already know about, that has already been established, that we know their backstory, we know their history, we know their relationships, we know their role in the world. Stephen Grant, Mark Spector, Moon Knight, Khonshu, all this shit is entirely new. And I think it's really fresh and exciting because of that. I mean, just having the opportunity to be introduced to not only a new sector of the Marvel Universe in terms of this mystical, earthly god, Egyptian culture side, but also being in London and in Europe in general, something that we've seen, snippets of Far From Home, a little bit of Eternals, but like largely the MCU is focused in America. It's San Francisco and Shang-Chi, most everything else in California or New York. Yeah. So from that regard, I'm very excited for this. And I also do think that the way that they set up a lot of these mysteries is very compelling. Not only does Steven have to figure out who he is and why his body is doing these things, he also has to deal with
Arthur Ethan Hawke character.
Arthur Grimmel. I don't fucking know his name.
Arthur Grindelwald.
No. But he has to deal with the cult who's doing some weird things, and he has to deal with Khonshu who's in his head, and the phone that he found, and what happened with his fish. Like, all this stuff is just like little like drips. Like, oh, what the hell is going on? And I think that having all these questions answered is going to be very satisfying, of course, across the series. But I'm also very excited to watch it expand. I think one of my big takeaways from this episode is it does feel pretty basic. Like, this is what I expected from maybe the first from the first episode, but I'm very excited to get a larger cast of characters, have more mysteries unveiled, have a greater variety of locations, those sort of things. This definitely feels like setup, and of course it is, but because of that, it felt a little slow and messy to me in places. Like, it was like, all right, we're gonna switch over to a different scene now because he's just gonna be doing something else. I'm like, all right, we got to get things set up, but I'm excited for it to kind of gain its own confidence and pick up steam.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a good time in like the first 15 minutes or so, but when that switch happens and he wakes up in the Alps or whatever, and we get the introduction of, well, there's a cold open with Ethan Hawke, but we get the real introduction of Ethan Hawke's character. I felt like that was like, oh, we're doing like a hard switch into this now, and I understand that that's like the point of him like, waking up, like, what the hell is going on? We're sort of in that same place, but it really felt like it's just a hard shift into it. And speaking of hard shifting, we do get an action sequence right in the middle of this episode, which is Oscar Isaac, Stephen Grant / Mark Spector / Moon Knight driving a cupcake truck down the sloping roads of the Alps in Switzerland or something like that. Man, and Tucker, what do you think of this action sequence here?
The cool part is that sometimes he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes he goes, whoa, and there's a bloody hand on his hand and a bloody gun on his hand. And like, that's interesting thematically and ties into the mystery of the character. But otherwise, this is a pretty bad action sequence. I do not give a fuck about these grunts that he has to deal with. The CGI might be worse than anything we've seen in the MCU in terms of the rubberiness of the cars and the those logs that fell. Holy shit, they look bad. Yeah. It was really jarring, and I think what it kind of proves to me that possibly, seeing where the series goes, but possibly outside of the hand-to-hand combat of Moon Knight, I don't know if this series works too well in terms of action. I think everything else in the episode, being more slow-paced, being based in the museum or his apartment or on the streets of London, figuring out the mysteries, having him, do his little funny quips and ticks, as I want to get into talking about why I like the character of Stephen Grant especially, and Oscar Isaac's performance, is where the series works its best.
Yeah.
But having to shoehorn in an action sequence because this is a superhero thing, it was one of the first times, well, maybe not one of the first times, but certainly recently for the MCU where I'm like, this did not need an action sequence.
Yeah.
In fact, the episode probably would have been better quality and worked better for where it works best if they had just cut that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with basically everything you said there. The CGI is shockingly bad in this.
Yeah.
And which is really interesting because these shows don't have small budgets. These have movie-level budgets.
Yeah.
And typically when you watch something like this, the really great CGI is going to be focused around the first episode and the last episode.
Yeah.
And
thinking about that beginning of Falcon and the Winter Soldier where Falcon's going through the canyons and the explosion shit. That looks great. That looks like a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing as how the CGI budget was not focused on this first episode for sure, or maybe this was a thing that got added later, and the CGI and the team didn't have a lot of time to put this together and polish everything. There's a lot of factors that could go into this, but it just really pulls you out of it because MCU does not sometimes has shoddy CGI, but nothing
usually
this
for
bad.
Like a shot or a part of a sequence. I think of Black Widow, her like diving down between the things, or like the handful of shots in No Way Home that look kind of wacky, or like one or two character moments from Infinity War or some previous movies. But on the whole, the MCU does have very quality CGI, and this kind of just felt low budget.
Yeah.
Which I think the reason it sticks out so much is because everything else about this show is high production value.
Yeah.
The sets look great. I think this has surprisingly good cinematography, though
I
it
agree.
isn't as creative as I thought it would because they used all the cool shots in the trailer. But one thing also I do want to say, stop crapping on the fucking car chase, is that one thing that does excite me a lot is basically everything in the trailers was in this first episode. We are treading uncharted waters starting in episode 2 for the most part. I mean, one or two standalone shots aside, we had the car chase here. We had the elevator thing here. We had him finding the phone here, getting a
that first
waking up in
transformation,
bed.
like in the bathroom. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And him beating up the fucking dog or whatever.
Yeah.
All those money shots from the trailer, we've already seen. So it's going to be entirely fresh going into the future.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to touch on the cinematography and the camera work and everything. I was really surprised by how adept it is.
Yeah.
In hang on, let me. Tucker, do you have the name of the director of this series? off the top of
Mohammed
your head?
Diab.
Thank you. Really just like surprisingly good. Like, and I just like the subtle uses. Well, maybe they weren't so subtle, but they weren't drawn attention to all the time of like mirroring and stuff like that. Because obviously that is, ties into Stephen Grant slash Mark Spector as a character. Like just like obviously there's the stuff where he's like walking by mirrors and shop windows and stuff like that, but even in the museum before that final confrontation with the moon dog thing or whatever,
Who the hell knows?
the ghoul dog, there's a thing where he's like walking up to a case and it's like parallel, and then he like goes past it and he stumbles back and it reverses that same thing. It's just really cool, just seeing that sort of attention to detail in things that people in Marvel projects, which people often criticize for not having, just little things like that. So yeah, I was really impressed by all of that.
Arthur Harrow. I just remembered.
Arthur Harrow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just came to my fucking brain.
Of course, everyone's favorite. Arthur Harrow and Honkshu, the moon god or whatever his name is.
No, Khonshu is the moon god.
Yeah.
Amit
is the cult
god
crocodile lady.
Yeah.
The god of judgment or something, probably.
Probably.
Wacky stuff when Ethan Hawke was like, Hitler never would have happened if Amit was around. So.
And then they pivoted, made an Avatar joke like 10
true.
seconds after that.
Yeah,
10 seconds after Hitler and a bunch of other list of bad people, bad things. Avatar joke because we own that property now.
Yeah. They don't own the anime, though. And it's not an anime, it is an American animation in the style of a Japanese anime.
That's a great point.
So Stephen Grant, get wrecked. Get epically owned, my God.
Well, that's actually a good transition to...
Me wrecking and epically owning Stephen Grant.
Well, yes, because I think the thing that makes Stephen Grant such an interesting character to follow, and it will be specifically interesting to see how that personality of this person maintains throughout the series, because you can kind of see maybe that he gets phased out in favor of Mark Spector and Moon Knight. But the setup of of Stephen Grant is, I think, the strongest aspect of this episode. He's
a likable character. Yeah.
Learning about his life and the tics that he has and his one-finned fish and the fact that he sets up his apartment every night with his 10 locks and his tape and his sand, and he says he calls his mom, maybe. I kind of don't think he's actually talking to someone.
For sure not.
Says Laters Gators, talks to the fucking like statue guy in the park and just like talking to himself. Like he's a fucking kunk.
He's an
a
odd
schmunk,
duck.
He's a cuck. He's he's a little
Whoa.
piss baby.
Whoa.
He's probably a cuck. Let's be real.
He hasn't had a girlfriend for a long time. We know that because he's like, to finally have a girlfriend or whatever.
Well, because he's a little fucking piss baby. But I think that's really fun to sort of have this entirely different kind of like he's totally not confident in himself, but he also like lets things slip in weird ways where he'll just like say something totally off base and like not notice that it's off base. Like I just think he's a really fun character to learn about, and I hope that personality stays relevant through the course of the show, which I think will stay relevant, but in terms of screen time, very fun character.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we haven't gotten Oscar Isaac really manifesting the Mark Spector personality.
Yeah.
Which we'll have to see what sort of character traits that Mark Spector has.
He's a mercenary.
He's a mercenary, and he's a real cool guy, as we see at the very end of this. He can handle stuff. But yeah, I think the problem, if they don't give Mark Spector like a very clear set of traits and everything like that, they'll keep Stephen Grant around because he will be our character arc through the thing.
Yeah.
He'll transition from a whiny little piss baby to less of a whiny little piss baby, presumably.
Yeah.
But above all, I just love to see Oscar Isaac having fun in this. It's very
Absolutely.
clear that he's having a lot of fun doing the accent, doing the weird little rituals and everything that he has, and doing his like weird stumbly and ahs in conversation, and he's just having a lot of fun, and I can appreciate that. Because
Absolutely.
it is, as you said to me, I think a couple days ago, it is nuts that we have an MCU show with Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, two of the
Yeah.
like most high-profile actors in Hollywood. We got them both in this series, and both of them will have quite large roles. Quite a bit of Ethan Hawke in this.
The
Yes.
largest roles in the series.
Yes, yes. But yeah, I'm also excited to see the supporting cast. We didn't really get anyone who I think will be around a whole lot in terms of actual human characters. We have this Layla person set up who we didn't see, but that'll be interesting to see what that whole relationship is.
Yeah.
She clearly knows Mark and maybe works with him on some mercenary stuff, or knows that he's Moon Knight, who's to say. It sets up a lot of really interesting things that will be fleshed out probably in the next episode at the very least.
Yeah. I think that's probably where we're going to learn about Mark first and foremost, and what his relationship to his past is, and all that kind of stuff. I'm very excited for that. The one thing I do want to mention in terms of cast, is something I don't know if you know about, but F. Murray Abraham is the voice of Khonshu, which is the voice that you keep, the fucking
Yes.
Venom style voice that he's like, huh, what? Where's it coming from?
The loser's here.
Yeah, and I'm like, I feel like I recognize that voice, and it's because F. Murray Abraham is old Zero Mustafa from Grand Budapest Hotel, the old man who Jude Law talks to, and he's got like a nice, relaxing, soothing voice, and I'm like, I recognize that fucking tenor, but I didn't know where it was from, but he's a great actor, and it'll be interesting to see how Khonshu plays into all this. I'm just excited to continue watching.
Yeah. Oh, I do have one final little nitpicky thing. I think they went a little overboard with the needle drops in this, with the soundtrack
On the
usage.
nose needle drops.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's all stuff that's like waking up and sleeping and stuff
Yes.
like that. Very clear why they chose those songs. But they really didn't add anything. There's a very clear, for me, very clear things which make a good needle drop, and it's not how they use those songs, which are very on the nose. Like, they don't really serve any character point or anything here. It's just like,
we know that he has sleep problems because of multiple personalities.
Yeah, I didn't really have a big issue with like the '60s stuff over the like montage or stuff, I guess, of our characters like going about their day. But the one that really rubbed me the wrong way was the "Wake Me Up Before You Go" over the truck chase.
Yeah.
Just because it's like fun song over serious action sequence, which is disappointing in that regard, but also disappointing because I like the score for this show. It popped up a couple times. I love the use of vocals in it. It sounds different than a lot of other superhero themes, especially MCU superhero themes that we've gotten. It's unique, and it incorporates the sort of Egyptian roots. And so I wish we would have gotten that in those action sequences, because like Oscar Isaac is already doing silly, goofy stuff in that. He's like, oh, what? Gun in my hand? What's going on here? So we don't need the added, the sultry tunes of Wham going as well.
I'm gonna assume that's the band.
It is indeed.
Great.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm overall pretty positive, quite positive on Moon Knight, the first episode. We'll be back after episode 3 for a mid-season check-in.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, until then, we will also be bringing back the UMP MCU films in review from all of us. That very original idea that only we've had.
Absolutely. We need to focus on that joke more.
Yes, we'll be bringing that. We'll be bringing that back after our mid-season review, because obviously we have some big superhero stuff coming out right now. We have Moon Knight, getting people like Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke into the MCU, and we also have the bigger accomplishment of Morbius. That's coming out as well. And you better bet your bottom dollar that we're going to do a review of Morbius. And Timo, our good friend Timo Nelson, who you'll know if you watch BLB and Quest for the Bestest, are a great show on BLB. He'll be joining us on that Morbius review.
Absolutely.
Yes. But until then,
fuck Moon Knight. Get ready for Morbius.
Yes.
Moonbius.
So, all of that is on the horizon for you, dear viewer. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for. Hang on. I was gonna like improv something there, but
Never do that again.
Sorry.